All right, so I'm home from infusion. I've got my bag. In case folks don't know, this is the Florasil or 5FME bag. I guess it's technically 5FU, but I like to call it 5FME. And you kind of rip this thing open. You see there's like a little display. It tells me how much more pumping I've got to do. I'm going to be on this thing for 48 hours roughly. I got to go in at 2:30 on Saturday to get unhooked. So anyway, I'm a bit nauseous, a bit dizzy, apparently a bit light sensitive, and apparently it's a bit rush hour because a lot of traffic going by. Anyway, I'm going to be hooked up to this pump until Saturday at 2:30 when they'll give me a bag of fluids and unhook me, and then I can begin sort of detoxing, because that's how it works. They pump you full of the poison for 2 days, and then the next 2 days after that are kind of the worst side effecty days, and you start to recover moving forward from there. So that's what will happen next. But let's talk about statistics. I said I want to talk about stats. Basically, when I got this thing, I looked up the survival odds and durations, which everybody does. And the number everybody runs into with stage 4 metastatic colon cancer is the 5-year survival rate is 15%. So how I would characterize that to my clients and the people that I used to teach probabilistic forecasting is that means there's an 85% likelihood of the other thing happening. So it'd be nice to be in the 15%. It's not guaranteed that I won't be, but the odds of me still being here in November of 2026, which will be my 5-year anniversary of diagnosis, are 15%. So I've got a lot of people who care about me, wanting me to ignore that number, wanting me to think that maybe I'm past that. Well, there's one person that doesn't care about me and wants me to assume that I'm cured, but as we can see, not cured. In fact, there is no treatment that is curative for stage 4 colon cancer. So basically what I would teach people is how to model things so that they could find out how likely something was going to happen, like how long something was going to take. And the sort of short answer for that is, that you look at the averages, and let's say one of the easy shortcuts to predicting with reasonable accuracy how long something's going to take is to take the average, which is the 50th percentile. That means that half of the outcomes happen before this and half after. So the average survival rate for stage 4 colorectal cancer is 32 months. So if you doubled that, that's the 50th percentile, means it's 50% likely. If you doubled that, that would be 64 months. So that means, more or less pretty high likelihood of close to 100% not around anymore at 64 months. So basically, as soon as I hit 32 months, I outlived half of the people with stage 4 metastatic cancer, which is great. Super delighted about that. I'm at about 46 months right now. I'm doing great. So 48 months is fantastic. I have no regrets. This is awesome. I've been very, very fortunate. A friend of mine in Ohio made it exactly 32 months, which is the 50th percentile, and that's really all any of us can hope for. 50th percentile means it's as likely to happen as not, right? Like either you're before it or you're after it. That's right in the middle of the expectation. So, I've gotten into it with Dr. Gold a little bit about it, where he kind of wants me to, he specifically said, stop being a fucking statistics professor and just live your life and let me worry about the numbers. And the problem with that is another thing that I like to teach people is that the only value really that this data has is decision value. So, you get a lot of managers who want to collect all of the cycle times and want to collect all of the data. And when I ask them, what's the data for? There's a cost to collecting it. People might change their behaviors from collecting data. There's all kinds of risks in collecting data. What are you going to do with that data when you have it? And I've had many people go, I don't know, I just thought it'd be good to have all the data, without realizing that having all the data is sometimes not the best. So decision value is what matters. What are you going to do with that data? And for me, knowing that I had a 5-year life expectancy, basically, that it's only a 15% chance I'll still be here in December of 2026, was how I'm going to spend the time that I have now. If I had 10 years or 15 years, I would make different financial decisions than if I only have 5. And really, for me, that calculus was, I'm going to spend my retirement on experiences with my boys and focus on rectifying my failures, teaching them what wasn't right about how we were living, and trying to teach them how they should live moving forward, knowing I'm not going to be there for them when they're adults and have to figure this out. So the thing about decision value is that it informs what you're going to do based on the information that you have available to you. And some people want to engage in wistful thinking. And I understand Gold's perspective of not wanting me to catastrophize. Like, it's bad for your health to worry. But I've never been worried about my death. It's going to happen to all of us. I'm a little less kind of okay with it now than I was before, just because, my role in my boys' lives has, if anything, become more essential than it was pre-divorce. And so, they're getting worried. But that said, I know worry's not going to help, and so I'm not really like spending time, breaking the clouds and screaming, "Why me?" So since there's no real harm to my health to being sort of statistically literate and understanding probabilistic forecasting, I'm able to make these decisions, and I make these decisions based on the data. And as I've told Dr. Gold, give me new data, I'll make a different decision. But until you tell me that I have some other expectancy, I'm going to go with this. Now, what's the counter argument? Well, I'm way past 32 months, so clearly I'm an outlier. I've had people say, oh, but the data doesn't reflect you because you're relatively young. The data includes everybody, including the very elderly and the people who have other comorbidities and illnesses. Yeah, and that's all true. And then, of course, I was on a clinical trial. So maybe that makes me an outlier. And hey, maybe it does. But the clinical trial may be why I'm here at 48 months. Remember, I'm kind of already on the outlier side of the probability spectrum. So what did I tell people who I was teaching this about? Like, they would say, executives always wanted to be like, oh, I can get it done in 1/10 the time we've ever done anything like this before because of my unique, exceptional genius and because I know how to torture software developers better than anybody else. And so they're going to go 5 times as fast for me, blah, 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 blah. But the fact of the matter is that those people would say, hey, what if things are way different? Like, I can't use historical data if everything we're doing now takes 10 times as long as anything we've ever done in the past, or the work is 10 times larger than the things we've been doing. Basically, what if everything is wildly different? And my answer to them was always the same. It's, things don't become wildly different in secret. When things get wildly different, you notice. You notice that things take 10 times longer than they used to. You notice that there's new complexity that you didn't have in the past. And when that happens, then now you've got to hedge your bets, or you've got to make different decisions, or ask yourself if maybe you have to discard that historical data and you're working sort of from a new perspective. So then the question becomes, is that the case with me? Am I an outlier? Now, one of the things that happened when I went to Gold and he talked to Ben about my recurrence was he said that we typically expect a recurrence after a positive Signatera test within 2 years or 24 months. And my recurrence occurred at 22 months. So not only, in the glide path, but close to the best case scenario. And I'm going on a more standard care regimen than I was on in the clinical trial. I'm still going to be on the panitumumab, but I'm also just going to be on standard FOLFIRI, which is leucovorin 5-FU or fluorosil and irinotecan. So what that tells me is when you say, hey, after this test, it should take 24 months for you to have a recurrence, and oh, look, that's exactly what happened. That's a data point for not being an outlier. That's a data point for things are progressing in a way that we would expect based on the prior data that we had. So I feel like you can't say the statistics don't apply to you. However, look at how the things that have happened to you have conformed within the boundaries of the statistics that set our expectations. It's one or the other. Like if they said, hey, we got this new clinical trial and there's this, magic orb from space and no one's ever had this before, but everybody who looks at it has been cured of their stage 4 colon cancer and we're going to get that for you, then I would be able to go, oh, okay, wait a minute, that's like outlier stuff. Like that's not the same as it's always been. But full theory, and even with Vectibix, is pretty damn standard of care. Like it's not a new innovation. It's not something that just came out last year. It's not like, oh, this new promising thing. It's the stuff. It's what we give people. And so I don't see enough evidence to make me think that I'm necessarily going to be a crazy outlier. I'm already an outlier, but another thought that I have is we know that 15% of people with stage 4 colorectal cancer are still alive in 5 years, but there's no data or evidence, and there's no statistics past that because there aren't like long-term studies on that 15%. So just because 15% make it 5 years doesn't mean that all of those 15% got another year or another 6 months or another month. Now, are there stage 4 people who've lived for 20 years? For sure. In fact, the head of the chemo nurses in my first batch, she's retired since, and she's fabulous. She was like, hey, we got one guy that's stage 4, and he's still here 20 years later. And, not to be a Debbie Downer, but my response was, one guy? And she's like, well, it's someone. And I said, yeah, and how many in the ground in that same 20 years? And she was like, okay, fair enough. I guess I'm just a statistical pragmatist. It is what it is, and if the data says something, I'm gonna make decisions kind of based on that data, not based on wishful thinking.
More like 1 out of a million.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
So that's the long and the short of it, really. I could bore you, as I have with thousands of people, on modeling and statistical probabilities and forecasting and all that stuff. But the short answer is, if something's 85% likely to happen, it's probably going to happen. If it's 15% likely to happen, it's probably not going to happen. And since a lot of the things that have happened to me, apart from, me making it past the 50th percentile, have been kind of expected things, and there haven't been a lot of outlier sort of events and activities, it's probable that I'm not an outlier. So that's where I stand. I'm not upset about it. It is what it is. I've got an 85% likelihood I'm not going to be here anymore next, November after this coming in 14 months. Gold feels confident that he can beat that. He doesn't strike me as a guy who minces words, but time will tell. So anyway, thanks to everybody for your support, and I hope this is helpful and clarifying.